PS5 jailbreak tutorial. So in this video, I'm gonna show you guys how to fully jailbreak your all the way up to firmware version 7.61, so 7.61 using a Blu-ray disc. This is currently the easiest way that you can jailbreak your up to 7.61 so far. So before we get started, we're gonna head over to our settings menu. Scroll down to System, go to System Software, and Console Information to check your firmware version. If we zoom into this long string of numbers here after the first dash, we have our firmware version, so mine is 7.61, which is of course firmware version 7.61. That is the highest firmware version that you can jailbreak on right now, so you can jailbreak on any firmware from 3.00 to 7.61. So you can follow this video if you're on any of those firmwares. From 3.00 up to 7.61, however, I would only recommend using this method to jailbreak your PS5. If you're on firmware 06.0020. 7.61, and the reason for that is any older firmwares than 6.00, you can actually jailbreak using the web browser, which is a much easier and more convenient way of jailbreaking your PS. So if you're on an older firmware than 6.00, check out my previous jailbreak guide on how to jailbreak using the web browser, which is going to be much better for you. But if you're on any firmware from 6.00 to 7.61, then the Blu-ray drive is the best option for you right now. So this method does have a few requirements. We need to have a disc edition console with a working disc drive. We also need to have a Blu-ray disc. I recommend the BD-re discs because those are rewritable. So any updates we can write to the same disc. So that's handy. It does also have to be a Blu-ray disc. It cannot be a DVD or CD, it needs to be Blu-ray. And that also means that you need to have a Blu-ray writer that's capable of writing that Blu-ray disc. So you need to have one of those in your computer. You can get external Blu-ray writers that can connect to your computer with a USB drive. So you can use one of those to write to your Blu-ray disc. So those are the requirements here for this jailbreak setup, okay? So before we get started, a couple of other settings. If we back out of System, we're gonna head down to System Software Update and Settings. Make sure both of these options are disabled. So download update files automatically and install update files automatically. Both need to be disabled to prevent accidentally updating your system to a higher firmware also. If you're going to be connecting your console to the internet, we also want to head to our network settings. Head to Settings, go to Set up an internet connection. Select your registered network and press Options on and go to Advanced Settings. And then head down to DNS Settings and change it from automatic to manual. And then set this IP address as your DNS server, 6-DOT to 10-DOT-38-DOT. If this address ever changes in the future, I'll leave an updated one in the description that you can use instead. Click Done and then click OK. This is a DNS blocker that will allow your console to connect to the internet, while also blocking connections to Sony's servers to prevent any system updates from being downloaded onto your console. So if you're going to be connecting to the internet, make sure you add that DNS in there as an extra layer of protection. So from there, we should be all good to go here. So now we just need to get the Blu-ray disc prepared. So first on the computer, we're gonna download all of the things that we need. So from Victorious X here, we have this ISO file that we're gonna write to our Blu-ray disc. For the jailbreak, so jailbreak all in one, we're gonna download this ISO file. I might put a different one in the description. If there are future updates or better versions available, I'll leave that in the description. So don't be concerned if the link in the description takes you to a different ISO. This is just the one I'm using right now. So go ahead and download the ISO here. We also want to download a few homebrew applications to run on our PS. Have it jailbroken. So from pkg-zone.com, we're gonna download the homebrew store. Click homebrew store and download for PS5. We also want items Flow Game Manager. We can download this for PS5 too. And then finally from John Tornblom's repo, we're gonna download the homebrew loader package file here as well. So download all of those things to your computer, okay? You can take your Blu-ray disc and put it into your Blu-ray burner. From there, we can right-click on the ISO file and select the option to burn the disk image, and then select your Blu-ray drive. And you can also tick the box to verify after writing to make sure the data is written to the disk properly, and then you can click the option to burn the disk. Now, sometimes Windows' own Blu-ray burner is not the best software for this. Another option would be to use Image Burn, which I'll leave linked in the description. With this software, you just open it up and select the option to write disk image, and then just drag and drop the ISO onto the software, or click the little folder button here to browse for it manually, and then just select the option to write the disk image, and that will burn the disk image to the disk, just as with the Windows tool. So once it's complete and it's finished the verification step, it should say the operation was completed successfully. You can click OK to that message and you should be all good to go. Your Blu-ray disc is ready and you can now insert it into the PS5. Okay, so now you need to grab a USB drive and plug it into your computer. Make sure the USB drive is formatted in SFAT format. You can right-click and go to Properties and just verify that the file system is SFAT. If it's not, you can right-click and reformat the drive and select SFAT as the file system. Obviously, make sure you back up any data on the drive before reformatting it. And what we're gonna do is take the Homebrew applications we downloaded and copy those to the root of the USB drive. Do not put them inside any folders. Just put them in the root of the drive. Now, I'll also take a couple of PS4 fake packages and copy those to the root of the USB as well, just drive. So I can demonstrate running some PS4 applications. Some PS4 games once we have the console jailbroken. Obviously, these will not be included in the description for obvious reasons. I also have some PS5 just apps to demonstrate running PS5 games once jailbroken. As well, PS5 apps are loaded differently to PS4 apps. PS4 apps come in .pkg files, which can be installed on the PS5 with the package installer, like installing app files on an Android device. Same kind of concept, whereas on PS5, we have to have the game files or the app files decrypted and stored in a folder, which can be loaded through a Homebrew application on the PS5. So it's a little bit different running PS5 apps versus PS4 apps. I'll go into more detail on this in future videos in this series, showing you how to run PS5 and PS4 applications in more detail. But this is just for demonstration purposes right now. So what we're gonna go ahead and do is just eject that USB and plug it into our PlayStation 5. And of course, I recommend plugging it into one of the back USB ports, which are the higher speed USB ports on the PS5. So once we have all of that ready, we can head over to the media section on our PS5, and we have the disc player, which has the PS5 auto jailbreak Blu-ray disc inserted. So we're just going to select X to run the displayer application. Now, if you get an error message saying that the HDMI needs to be changed, just select that option and make sure you enable HDCP. If HDCP is disabled, it will not allow you to run the disc. So you need to renable that option if you have it disabled in the settings. So just make sure you do that. If you're running into that error message, you may also get another message when you first load the Blu-ray asking disc, you if it's allowed to connect to the internet. Just say yes to allow access and you should be all good. And eventually, you should end up on a menu that looks something like this. And what we're gonna do is head to the pipeline runner, and we're gonna run the jailbreak that has ETA, hen and umtex 1. That's the option we're gonna select here. And this will basically run the kernel exploit to jailbreak the console. It will then run the elf loader and then ETA, which is the main jailbreak payload for the PS5 right now. So that is what this will do. It will run all three for you. So you just have to wait for it to complete. Now, this jailbreak is not perfectly stable, so it can sometimes crash the console during this process. If that happens, you'll just have to turn the console on by pressing the power button twice, waiting for it to reboot. You might get an error message about it being shut down improperly, but you don't have to worry about that. Just click OK, and then once you get back onto your PS5, you just run the displayer again until it eventually runs to completion. So here we go, we've got our debug settings running. And then we'll get a message telling us to close the displayer. So any second now, there we go. Close displayer to continue. So we can press X to return back to the menu, and then we can press the PS button, head back to the home page, and then wait till we regain a signal. Then we can press Options on the displayer and select the option to close app. And then once the displayer closes, it should start running ETA hen. There we go, bootstrap for ETA hen is starting. Okay, stuff successfully loaded. And there we go, we are up and running with ETA hen, which is our jailbreak here. So if we head into our settings and we scroll down to our debug settings, you can see we now have the ETA hen toolbox, which is our jailbreak menu that is now available. So congratulations, you have now successfully jailbroken your PS5. So what we can do from here is install the applications. You can actually install the homebrew store, but I believe this option doesn't work on some older firmware. So that is why we installed them to the USB drive. So if we head to our package installer, we can see all of the package files that I put on the USB drive. I can just select the option to install all of them, and that will get them all transferred onto our PS5. So this is how you basically install all of your PS4 applications, your homebrew applications onto the PlayStation 5. Here, we just install them from a USB drive using the package installer. So we've got PT installed. Here's our items flow application and our homebrew store. And there we go, everything is now successfully installed. So if we head over to our games section, we now have the homebrew store installed. We've got items flow, we've got our PS4 games, and also the homebrew launcher has all been installed here. So, the homebrew store allows you to install other homebrew applications. If we run this, we get granted a jailbreak by ETA hen, and then that will allow us to run our homebrew applications. And then from here, we can basically install any additional homebrew apps that we want. So if I want to install something like PS5 Explorer, I can just hit download and install. And that will download and install that homebrew application to our console. So if you want to install any future homebrew applications or emulators or anything else, games, you can basically just use the homebrew store to download them directly to your console. Once they're downloaded, you can press the options button to close out of the homebrew store. And you can see it's installing the PS5 Explorer right there. And it is now installed. So that's how you get additional homebrew apps installed. We also have items flow, which can be used to run our PS5 apps. Should just run as is. So I can launch Minecraft here, and you can see it is working. So we can get our PS4 games running nice and easy. We just have to launch them. And then if I go ahead and close out of Minecraft now, that will take us back here to the menu. Then if I want to run any of the PS5 apps that I have on my USB drive, I can open up items flow. So it's a little bit more complicated to get PS5 apps installed. So we use items flow to run our PS5 apps. We can also use items flow to run PS4 games. We can just launch them from in here. But if we want to add our PS5 apps that are on the USB drive, I can just head to this PS5 app section and then tell it to scan for applications. And that will check the USB drive to see if there are any PS5 apps to add. And as you can see, we've got those 3 games that I had on the root of my USB drive. Now say yes to add them as it's detected all 3. Click OK, and boom, there we go. They have now been added here. So I can launch one of them like Lies of P. Let's try and launch this from items flow. And this should get our native PS5 game loaded. So PS5 games take a few seconds to launch here. And just like that, we have our native PS5 games running here on our console. Using the jailbreak, so that is how you get PS5 games and also PS4 games running, as well as your homebrew applications. So it's important to mention that this is a tethered jailbreak, which means when you restart the PS5, you will lose access to the jailbreak. The jailbreak is only running as long as the console remains running. As soon as you restart, you lose access to the jailbreak. Now, what that means is that you still have all of the stuff that you installed while you were jailbroken. So all of the PS4 and PS5 homebrew applications that we install will still be there after we restart the console. You'll see that everything is still installed. But when I try to run any of this stuff like the fake package game, it says it cannot find it. If I try and run a homebrew application, it will not let me launch a PS4 game. It says it cannot connect to the server to verify the license. So it's basically not allowing me to run any of the stuff I installed while I was jailbroken. So of course what you need to do is run the jailbreak by loading up the displayer application, selecting the same option as before, getting it to run through to ETA hen. And once you have ETA hen running again, you'll then be able to load all of your stuff. So once I've run the displayer, I've gone through all of that. I've reloaded at a hen again. You can see that everything else should now work again. So if I try and run Minecraft once again, it's running as it did before. So we've now got everything back up now and when running. It comes to running your PS5 games, it's a little bit different again. Because even after we're running ETA, we won't be able to run say Lies of P that I loaded before. But we will be able to load it once we run items flow. And then once items flow loads, we can then load it from within this application again. And you'll see that it will then allow us to run it. So that is what you need to do is after rebooting the console, you have to rerun the jailbreak again. That's the nature of a tethered jailbreak. Now there is a kind of workaround for this, which is instead of turning your console off, what you can do is actually put it into rest mode instead, and then recover from rest mode, and then the jailbreak will still be running. So this is another option. Instead of having to go through running the jailbreak again every single time you reboot, is to use rest mode instead. So in order to do that, what we're gonna do is head down over to our debug settings. And then we're gonna go down to the ETA hand toolbox on startup. And we're gonna turn this option off. And then from there, we should be able to put the system into rest mode. So now, if I go ahead and put it into rest mode instead of turning it off. So when we come out of rest mode, we get the notification saying it's coming out of rest mode. And there we go, we're back up and running. So because we've recovered from rest mode instead of rebooting, the jailbreak will still be running, so if I load Minecraft, you can see that it will still work. So we're still able to run our fake packages. PS4 applications, our homebrew applications, PS5 games, all of that should still work as it was before. So that is what you can do instead of turning the console off. Now because we had to disable the toolbox auto start in order for rest mode to work properly. When we go back into the debug settings, we no longer have the ETA hand toolbox, just the regular debug settings. So when you come out of rest mode, if you want to get those options back again, you'll need to run items flow. Okay, so once we get items flow back up, we can press the options button here, and then we can go down to ETA hand toolbox and then re-inject / re-add the toolbox. And this will take a few seconds here. Says it will take up to 10 seconds. So just give it a few seconds, up to 10 seconds, and there we go. Has been re-added. So now if we press circle twice to exit out of items flow, and we go back into the debug settings, you can see we now have the toolbox reapplied. So again, the toolbox is not really required. It's just if you want to adjust any options in here, you can do that. But when you recover from rest mode, with the option to disable toolbox on startup, which is needed for rest mode to work properly, then it will just give you the normal debug settings when you recover from rest mode. But that is fine if you're not using any of the toolbox options. You can still run your fake packages. You can still run your homebrew apps. You can still run your PS5 apps through items and flow. It will still work just fine. Recovering from rest mode, it's only if you want to get those toolbox options back in the debug settings that you're gonna want to head back into items flow and inject the toolbox. Other than that, you can just use rest mode and recover from rest mode. Instead of switching your console off and restarting. Because if you do that, you'll have to reload the jailbreak again from the displayer. So anyway guys, that's how you fully set up the PS5 up to firmware jailbreak version 7.61. There's also a second way of loading the jailbreak up to 7.61 using a save game exploit, which I'll probably cover in a future video. It's not as convenient to set up as the Blu-ray exploit. But once you have it set up, it can actually run the jailbreak faster. So I'll probably make a video on that. For any of you guys that are interested in loading the jailbreak, using a different method, and again, if you're on a firmware older than 6.0, I highly recommend using the web browser which is much more convenient. But at the moment, this is kind of the best option. We have up to 7.61 right now, and this video will be part of a playlist, which I will be adding new videos to over time, which will include things like how to run PS4 games and DLC, as well as doing things like running 1 FPS to games through emulation, retro emulators like Retroarca. Also doing things like being able to take your disc games and turning them into backups that you can run without the original game disc. Running a 60 FPS patches for your PS4 games, cheats as well, game cheats, and many other things that we're gonna be covering in this series. So keep an eye on the playlist, which is linked down in the description, because I will be adding videos to it as time goes on. So anyway, hope you guys enjoyed this one or found the information useful. If you did, please leave a like and subscribe, and